In this film, we want to follow the issues presented in this week's master classes and tutorials, and share with you insights from student filmmakers on the process of field production and editing. We'll look at the work of a student producer team who traveled to Costa Rica to film a story about private rainforest reserves, and also a student group who traveled to Nepal to look at the role of youth in the humanitarian response to natural disasters. This film will also include insights into the questions of production, story development, and the art of the interview with Oscar-nominated filmmaker Robert Stone. In the spring of 2018, a group of Columbia graduate students traveled to Costa Rica to visit the famous Monteverde private rainforest and the nearby Children's Eternal Rainforest Reserve.
Private conservation of land is actually a huge part of what makes conservation viable. And the rainforest that we're looking at in particular is the largest of those reserves in Costa Rica, covering 23,000 hectares.
Their mission was to understand the role of private rainforest reserves in preserving biodiversity, and also in the wider question of global warming.
When we think about preserving environments, some environments are truly precious and destroying them is irreversible.
But while the rainforest's role in preserving biodiversity is well known, it also has a role in mitigating global warming.
Our project is able to provide some visual understanding to universities as well as to other private reserves.
While in the capital of San Jose, they were able to schedule interviews with senior leaders, including the Costa Rican Minister of the Environment.
La conservación en Costa Rica ha sido una política de Estado, resguardar aquellos ecosistemas que efectivamente son únicos y especiales.
We got to interview really fantastic subjects and practiced our skills in focusing the camera on their face, making sure that the background was properly arranged, that we had a sort of a balance of light. And this practice was invaluable to actually determining the right way to make these sort of natural lit interviews in the field. We also had the opportunity to shoot B-roll of both our subjects and of exteriors and this sort of thing, and get a good understanding of the balance of wide, medium, and tight shots that are necessary to make a compelling visual story.
The questions of how to frame the issues at hand and who to cast as their principal experts were central to their endeavor.
Interviewing as many people as possible, stakeholders from the community, farmers, as well as filming B-roll and different kinds of shots of the two rainforests side by side.
In their research on the ground in Costa Rica, they also came across fascinating side stories, including the history of the Children's Eternal Rainforest, which had been created in the 1980s in a campaign led by a visiting Swedish schoolteacher.
A Swedish teacher came to Costa Rica and fell in love with Monteverde. And when she returned home, she saw an opportunity to work with her students to actually make a real positive impact in conservation. And over the next 20 years, with the help of several NGOs, they managed to raise enough money to buy almost 56,000 acres of land in Costa Rica for private conservation. At the end of all this, they named that area of land the Children's Eternal Rainforest to sort of pay homage to these original children in Sweden.
The question of how to construct documentary narrative and how to use and frame key interviews was also something discussed with students by visiting filmmaker Robert Stone, who addressed the class during a visit to New York City to promote his recent PBS series, Chasing the Moon.
Once you've decided what story it is that you want to tell, the most important decision you have to make is who's going to be in your movie and who's going to tell that story. If you have one compelling character and one compelling story that's an example of whatever the policy idea is that you're trying to communicate, that's going to be better than interviewing 100 academics talking about it. Finding people who've experienced things firsthand can be tricky sometimes. But if you take some digging, it's detective work finding these people.
The final student film, Private Rainforest Reserves, was also shown on PBS's environmental series, Peril and Promise. And two of the filmmakers were invited to be interviewed at WNET's Lincoln Center studio.
When we look at rainforests as an ecosystem, they're sort of the lungs of the world. A threat to the rainforest is, in some real sense, a threat to our own lives.
In the spring of 2019, another Columbia student group was preparing to travel to Nepal, where they'd be working with the international humanitarian response group Mercy Corps to research and document the issue of how to best involve young people in humanitarian response.
young people in Nepal want to help. They want to be there. And me and a team of 6 others developed a set of recommendations of how they could do this in Nepal. Because the goal is that if it works in Nepal, then theoretically it works in their other country teams. So this is where video came in.
The world's fastest growing demographic group is young people. They are often also the group most impacted by natural disasters.
The first responders are often the communities, and by communities I usually mean young people. It's the young people that go out there.
But until now, few groups have included the needs and capabilities of youth in disaster relief and training.
On the ground in Nepal, the group conducted research interviews with a wide variety of stakeholders. The interviews would serve the purpose of both the research project and the digital case study.
As we documented what we did in Nepal and how young people can be engaged in Nepal, we created a video that not only told other country teams how they could maybe implement these guidelines in their country processes, but also inspire them to do it.
The digital case was also used by the project partner Mercy Corps as part of their ongoing training and outreach program. They became full partners in the project, also sharing with the student research teams archive images they had collected of previous earthquakes and other natural disasters. Working with video archives is something that is central to many documentary film processes.
Everybody's filming everything. Everybody's got an iPhone. Almost anything you can imagine there's film footage of. And that is, you can call that archive because it's not something you shot, but that's just an incredible resource to tap into to tackle almost any subject.
In the case of the Nepal film, the work of the student filmmakers created a digital case that is used by others around the world confronting similar problems.
Video transcends all cultures, all geographies. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, video is present and video is a catalyst for change.
Marrying an idea to a story and a story to character and the character to emotion. And delivering that idea in a way that's communicated through emotion. That's what you're doing in visual storytelling.